Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, Corey Poirier, who's here to share with us living in your purpose. So would you like to live life from purpose and passion? Well, today's guest is going to share with us how to do just that. Now, many of you have heard of Corey Poirier. My goodness, he is such an inspiration. Now, Corey Poirier is a multi-time TEDx speaker, host of the top-rated Let's Do Influencing radio show, founder of the speaking program, and has been featured in multiple TV specials. He is a best-selling author and columnist with Entrepreneur and Forbes, and has also interviewed more than 6,500 of the world's top leaders and has spoken on-site at Harvard and most recently to Microsoft team members. Appearing on the popular Evan Carmichael's YouTube channel, he is a new Media Summit icon of influence and was recently listed as the number 5 influencer in entrepreneurship by Thinkers 360. So let's welcome to the show, Corey Poirier.
Thanks so much, Marianne. Super stoked to be here.
Well, Corey, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about purpose. What even got you started on this path?
So, ultimately, it really happened because I discovered my own purpose. And not only did I discover it, but it transformed my entire life. So, pre discovering purpose, I was battling anxiety, hypochondria. For 2 years, basically, if I heard about a disease, I got the symptoms. And so I was really struggling until this one night I performed stand-up comedy. I was tricked into it. And the next day at work, people said, "Did you meet someone? Because you seem to have a different jump in your step." And that was the clue that I discovered the start of my purpose, or it was down that path. And basically everything changed overnight. It was almost like I say now, I took vitamin P, the P being for purpose. So it's like I took vitamin P, and I don't want to use the word cure, but it was like everything changed overnight.
Now, did you have any indications when you were younger that maybe this was a direction you would go in?
Not even the slightest. I didn't even know there was such a thing as to be honest, I didn't even hear anybody ever use the word purpose or passion. So I didn't even know it would be possibly a thing to do, anything in the world of purpose and passion. So no, I didn't think it existed, meaning A, purpose and passion, or B, the idea of helping somebody find their purpose and passion. I didn't even know that was a thing. So no, honestly, didn't foresee this at all.
Well, we're glad that you did because it is obviously your calling. I mean, I've seen your TED Talks and they are just amazing. So, when we talk about purpose, I'm sure a lot of people are going, well, how do I find my purpose? I'm not even sure what that might be.
So honestly, usually what we tell people is that they really it starts really with making a list. So a list of what are the things I would do if money wasn't an issue. What are the things I would do if I won the lottery? So similar concept, but I went away to a beach, and then after I got bored at the beach, I came back. What would you do when you came back? Or what would you do if you or when you were a kid rather? What did you do that you loved that somebody talked you out of doing because they said it wasn't practical? And so it's really a mixture of those things. And when you build that list, you would then have a list of a certain number of things that you think you might like or enjoy. And what I suggest from there is people start putting them in order of the ones that they think they like the most. So what's the one that gets your mojo working the most? And make a list of those. And then basically what I want a person usually to do at that point is to break them down into smaller pieces, because it'll be easier to tackle them on a smaller scale than to try to jump in all at once. And so tackle them on a smaller scale, and that each of those ones that you take action on, give yourself a predetermined or pre-planned reward. And what I find is that'll keep driving you forward. And then when you get to the last one, it seems like such a small step that it'll feel like you're already there. Like it won't seem like a massive jump or leap.
Well, that sounds like that's a really easy process to work through. Now, for those folks that are perhaps going, gosh, I wanted to be like, 'cause I'm thinking about when I was a kid, I was going to be an astronaut, a marine biologist, astrophysicist. I mean, I had all these things in mind, and none of them are where I'm at today. But it's interesting. It's all of, in many ways, it's like how you went through your thing. It's like all this points of connection get us to where we're supposed to be.
Yeah, well, and I will add that, I didn't, I guess, say the other piece to that, which is that I also believe that, that what I just suggested is that's a way to find your passion. So, that list you made is probably like photography, it's probably like music. I shouldn't say probably like, but it could be. It could be painting, it could be watching sports, like it could be a list like that. And then once you have that list, like I said, you tackle them. And so you start taking action, the first one on the list. Well, what I find is after probably a few months, you'll know pretty quickly if this is a passion. And then what I also find, which is the part that most people don't talk about, is that'll tell you if it's a passion. And if you keep doing it, I find the purpose reveals itself. So I shouldn't leave that, empty and not mention that part, because what I shared is not really finding your purpose, it's finding the passion that leads to your purpose. And the reason I say that is because what I find is your purpose doesn't change very often, if ever. Your passion can change all the time. And the difference between the two is passion is what you do, purpose is why you're actually doing it. So, having said all that, to answer your other question, I didn't, what I'm doing now, you know what, in some ways, I was going to say it's not really reflective of what I saw as a kid, but in some ways it is actually, because I always thought I wanted to be a rock star. And that was kind of the big when I was a kid. Here's what I want to do. I didn't know there was such a thing as speaking and getting paid to do it. Stand up comedy, I knew of it to some degree, but I didn't know that was a thing. But what happened was what led me to what I'm doing now was me performing stand-up comedy. Like I went back after that first night where I did horrible and did horrible again over and over again for a long time before I started getting laughs. And then at the same time, as a musician, I was out playing gigs. And so I kind of got to live that mini rock star lifestyle. Well, the combo of the two of those is what led me to finding what I'm doing now. So I guess in some ways, this is an extension of what I wanted to do. But the thing I wanted to do, which was Rockstar, once I started living that world, I realized it wasn't necessarily what I thought it was going to be. So, at the end of the day, I'm not really doing what I planned, but in some ways, I got to at least try and explore that as well.
When we talk about being fueled by vitamin P, and you talked about that earlier, so what does that look like?
So vitamin P for me is I call it, purpose or passion. It's like the P is for either one of those. In fact, I would say it's for both. But again, as I implied earlier, I don't see them as interchangeable, but I would say one is the gateway to the other. So vitamin P to me, I kind of jokingly say when I talked earlier about how everything transformed after that night in that stand-up stage, it's like I took vitamin P. So it's like I took a vitamin, and again, I won't use the word cure. I'm not a doctor, but I noticed that my hypochondria and my anxiety started disappearing almost overnight. So that's where I started saying it was like vitamin P. We have all these vitamins we can buy in the store, but you can't buy a vitamin P in the store. And then like I said, I've continued to say it's probably the most important vitamin you'll ever take. But that's really what vitamin P is. It's when you every day wake up living on purpose. I see it as you're taking vitamin P every day.
So, is there a benefit to finding out our purpose as early in life as possible?
I believe so. Yeah. In fact, what my TED talk, the last one that's aired, because there's a newer one coming out, but the last one that's aired is called "How Schools Can Inspire Purpose," and that's the whole premise. Is what if we were to start teaching kids about finding passion and purpose earlier in life? And where it was kind of triggered from is my own experience of went through school, felt aimless, even after school, like years after school, still felt aimless, and eventually started finding my calling and realized, imagine how powerful life would be and how much different my life would have been back then if somebody would have even talked about this stuff in school or earlier in life. And so and then the second part to it is my son went to we went to his parent teacher interview, and they were completely focused on his weaknesses and what he was doing wrong, but ignoring the stuff that he's passionate about and doing really well. And so the combination of the two of those made me start wanting to explore this idea that, yeah, what if we were to teach kids earlier in life about the power of finding a passion earlier in life?
I really like how you shared about your client with the teddy bears. I thought that that was perfect in a TED talk.
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, that still cracks me up. The story, like even myself, whenever I share it, it still cracks me up. Um, so I love sharing that story because I think it's so appropriate that, well, and just the idea that you would teach the teddy bears, but the idea that you you don't have your friends over, and maybe your friends wouldn't be into accounting, so you're doing that to your teddy bears that young of an age. I think it's probably, I mean, it doesn't mean, well, obviously stuff that we're passionate, but it doesn't mean we're going to continue that passion for the rest of our life. But I think it's kind of a clue whenever you're doing something like accounting, which most other people would never think of doing as a kid, and you're actually teaching it to teddy bears, which means you would teach it to the neighbor kids if they'd listen. I think, that's a really good sign that this might be a passion area.
Well, especially when she turns the one to the wall that isn't really paying attention. I thought that was hysterical, but how true is that? You could see just the light there at a young age, and given the opportunity to have that really blossom would have been a perfect thing.
Yeah, it absolutely, like I mentioned, as far as as far as the idea that, at the very least, it would have given me stuff to explore, and even at the very least as well, give me the idea that there's this thing called passion, because I really didn't even know passion existed at that point. Um, so it would, at the very least, like I say, give me the idea that you can be passionate about something. It can feel exciting to do something. There, it can be a thing that is your calling and all that kind of stuff. That just, it gave me that side of things, which I didn't really have a direction or realize there was even such a thing as a direction. So yeah, absolutely. I think it was really important for me to find it when I did, but I also think it would be great if we could find it sooner.
So do you think people kind of get stuck in their comfort zones, and that's kind of why passion and their purpose isn't really found out sooner?
I do. Honestly, I think it is because there's a great quote. Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote Conversations with God, it's his quote, and he said, "Life begins at the end of your comfort zone." And so I believe that to be true, and uh, and I believe at the same time, most people never get outside of and or try to expand their comfort zone. And I do believe if life begins at the end of our comfort zone and we never push to the end of our comfort zone and get beyond it, then at the end of the day, at the very least on that side, is how sad is that many people will go their whole life without ever even know what they're missing out on. But I do truly believe that our comfort zone is what keeps us a, comfortable, but B, at the same time, it might be the reason that we're not experiencing what we were fully meant to be. And I'll tell you at this point, honestly, I'm the opposite scenario of when I was younger. For me, now it's very, very, very uncomfortable for me to be in a comfort zone only. So I'm the opposite now. Like, I'm uncomfortable being comfortable.
Wow, and that makes sense. I mean, that's why they call you the speaker guy, because I think you're really kind of also reaching people in an area, because speaking to others, that makes people really uncomfortable. So, do you find that you push a lot of boundaries when you're doing that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the comedy, the stand-up comedies probably was my first major step outside my comfort zone back in the day, and that led me to speaking. And they say the number one fear in the world above death is public speaking. So the kind of joke is that if you were at a funeral, you'd rather be in the casket than doing the eulogy. And so for the average person, that's how strong a fear it is. Well, I'd say stand-up comedy's a much bigger fear than that, but they don't even rate it because most people will never, ever, ever try stand-up comedy. And so for me, that was a really big part of me stepping outside my comfort zone, was that first night at stand-up comedy. And then speaking continued down that path. And still to this day, part of what I probably get from speaking is it is uncomfortable. And I, again, feel comfortable now outside of my comfort zone. And so speaking definitely is a number one fear for a lot of people. And I understand why. And I still have fears whenever I'm going to speak, but I push through them. But yeah, as far as that goes, for me, I started expanding my comfort zone with the comedy, and then I evolved that to speaking. Even playing music on stage was a outside my comfort zone at a certain point. And beyond that, then I went once I got a little, I'll say, once I expanded my comfort zone quite a bit, then I started doing other things. Like I jumped outside of a plane, even though I'm terrified of heights. I went surfing in Tofino, British Columbia, even though I can't swim, which I don't recommend for other people. And I go in the pool and I go on water slides, even though I can't swim. And all of those things, I don't believe I ever would have expanded to those without me performing stand up that first night. So I think that's really what pushed it all. But again, to answer the direct question, speaking is definitely always been a challenge. And I wasn't that person that was born to be a speaker. I know that for a fact, based on how I started and how long it took. And at the same time, I think it is for most people. And I understand why, because there's the element, I think it's even more so the unknown of what could happen is bigger than the fear of something happening. So I think really a lot of times we ignore that. We think it's the fear of rejection on the stage, but I actually think it's that we don't know what's going to happen. And when we don't know what's going to happen, we're not in control. And I believe and feel that's why most people don't want to get up on a stage is they just don't know what could happen. It could go great, and that's a possibility, but it could go really bad, and that's a possibility. And people don't like, I think, being that far outside their comfort zone and being in that far into a risk area of what could happen.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Have you dreamt of writing your own book but felt lost on where to start? Introducing DIYbook.us, your personal guide to bringing stories to life. Whether it's your life story, business insights, or unique experiences, DIYbook.us makes it easy and affordable. With our step-by-step online program, you'll receive a weekly email prompt tailored to you. Don't let your story go untold. Visit www.DIYbook.us and start your writing journey today with our free 7-day trial. DIYbook.us, where your story comes to life.
Are you a coffee lover who wants to make a difference? Look no further than Fire Department Coffee, a veteran-owned business that gives back to support first responders in need. Each batch of coffee is freshly roasted right here in the USA by a dedicated team of first responders and coffee experts. So when you enjoy a cup of Fire Department coffee, you're not only drinking high-quality coffee, you're supporting members of your community. Start your day with a coffee that gives back. Visit firedepartmentcoffee.com. That's fire, D-E-P-T, coffee.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special. When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
It's one thing to become attached to your perfect home, but what do you do when that home becomes attached to you? A family in dire need of a fresh start, a mysterious house tied to the past. Buried deep within the foundation of the old Far Hill Manor lies a centuries-old secret. Dark forces or something stronger just waiting to be discovered. Caretaker, a supernatural thriller by breakout authors R.J. Halpert.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest, Corey Poirier as we talk about living in your purpose. So, how can people move beyond their comfort zone?
Honestly, I think it starts with baby steps. I mean, there's a few things like in one of my TED Talks, I talk about expanding your comfort zone. So I think one of them is baby steps. So you don't try to tackle, what do they say? Like it's a kind of a morbid way of saying it, but the quote is something like, what's the best way to eat an elephant? 1 inch at a time or something like that. And I think it's the same thing. Like the best way to get outside your comfort zone and conquer a fear is 1 inch at a time. I think, figure out what you want to do. Like, let's say it was stand-up comedy, and then figure out what are the baby steps. Well, maybe that's bringing a comic out for lunch and ask them about comedy and what you should be on the lookout for. Maybe it's watching a HBO special on comedy and taking notes of what you like. Maybe it's reading the Comedy Bible by Judy Carter about comedy and learning about the world of comedy. Maybe it's attending a workshop. So setting, first of all, small baby steps. And again, back to my earlier point, giving yourself rewards for those baby steps because you want to reward yourself for taking action. That's the first start, or one of the ways you can get outside your comfort zone. Another thing that I recommend is do it with a buddy. Have somebody along for the ride that's also maybe just as scared as you, and do it as a team. It's almost like again, kind of a bad analogy, but it's like the Thelma and Louise movie, right? Like they were in it together, and so find a buddy that can support you and cheer you on when you're struggling, and you could do the same for them, just like you would do if you were working out. Some people use the buddy system for working out and work out with each other and cheer each other on. I believe you can do the same thing with getting outside your comfort zone. So those are a couple of quick ones, is making it into smaller steps so it's not so scary, taking action on those smaller steps and giving yourself rewards when you take action, and then finding a buddy who's willing to do it all with you.
Oh, we all have that one buddy that will do stuff with us. So they'll sign up and say, "Yes, I'll go ahead and we'll start doing that hike or whatever the challenge is."
Absolutely.
Well, and I know you talk about steps in regards to doubling our personal income, and I was really intrigued by that, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
So this thing is honestly, it's really, I'm going to say, unique in the sense that it's not, it's a strategy, but it's like, for lack of a better way of saying it, for some people, it might seem woo woo and seem like that can't be it. It can't be that simple. But for me, it has been. And so this one magic pill, I'll call it, is I learned this from a guy named Ken Honda, who wrote a book called Happy Money. And Ken's also an instructor with Mind Valley. And Ken, in his book, talks about money being energy, and how what he does, he learned this from his mentor, is he wants to be grateful for the money coming in and out. And so he found a way to physically do that. So you're telling the universe that I'm grateful. And so all he does is he basically says arigato when money comes in and money goes out. And when I first heard this idea, I started doing it. But what I realized later is, for the first few months, I wasn't really feeling it with my energy. Like I wasn't really feeling myself push the money out with gratitude. And so I changed it, started doing that. Like literally when I'm at Walmart buying something, I literally push the money out. Like I feel it myself pushing it to the world. Like it's not pushing it to Walmart, it's putting the energy out into the world and trying to make it flow. And so what I also found is the hardest thing to do is to do it when you're giving out money, because nobody's grateful usually for giving away money. It's easy to do it when it's coming in. But the point is, I literally started doing that. I started saying arigato every day, money going out, money coming in. Also, I mean, part of that is then you're not resentful of money. And I think if you're resentful for money, you get less. So like, you're not going, oh man, I got to pay this or I got to do that. Like I literally am saying, thank you for allowing me to have enough money to do this or that. And so I started doing that. And then without realizing, because I didn't really plan to track it or anything, but without doing anything else differently. Now, of course, there's other, like everything with business, there can be other variables like, well, you've been doing it longer, you have more referrals, that type of thing. But the one thing I can tell you is, from the 12 months roughly after I did that until, obviously 12 months later, when we looked at the numbers, because it was easy to look at because we have a whole bunch of different ways we bring in money, like platforms. One of them is PayPal. So I just use PayPal as the barometer. I mean, I could have taken bank account or anything else, but I used PayPal. And we were up, the first time I did it, 12 months later, we were up 114%. So we've more than doubled over the previous year. But what's really fascinating is then kept going. And another year later, we had doubled the new number, which means like we were what, like, I don't know, 4 times what we were before. But I don't know if that math works, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, we doubled 2 years in a row. And the only thing I did different, which sounds so crazy, cheesy, corny, what have you, is I literally started showing gratitude toward my money. So that was what I did to literally double our revenue 2 years straight.
And Honda is such a resource when it comes to that. And I'm so glad that you shared that and shared how it has impacted you and how you're teaching this. Because I think it's so important. A lot of times people do kind of brush this stuff off as like, oh, well, that's that manifesting stuff or what have you, when we all know everything is energy.
Absolutely, 100%. And, um, I will say that, and by the way, I should add too that this year, so far anyway, it's in that same pattern again. So it's like this is the 3rd year in a row. But yeah, I mean, here's the interesting part. As you said, everything is energy. Well, me, I was a spiritual skeptic growing up. And so for me, everything wasn't energy. I didn't understand that. I didn't believe until probably, I shouldn't say believe, but I didn't know of or think money could be energy even as little as 5 years ago. So this is newer stuff to me. Like I was synchronicity. I used to just blow it off as coincidence. Now I have a synchronicity journal. I literally just wrote in it before our interview today. And so I write down synchronicities happen. And lo and behold, in a matter of a week, I'll have 7 or 8 synchronicities that some people will say, "Oh, I had one of those in my life." And I maybe I had this many before. I don't think I did. I think telling the universe I want them meant that they stopped at me and didn't go to somebody else. But also, I think once you start being aware of them, you notice the ones you already did have. So it's kind of like a mixture of both. But I was a spiritual skeptic, and so the idea of money being energy didn't even mean a thing to me. It might even been as little as 4 years ago. And the idea now that I believe it so much that every day, anytime I'm interacting with money, I say arigato, just kind of still blows my mind. But yeah, now I understand that it's energy and believe it fully. But there was certainly a time whenever I didn't even have a clue what that meant.
Well, that is so important. And I actually had one of those before our talk today, too. So, how impactful is that? And I know that you share about meditation for manifesting. What does that look like?
So, meditation for me is probably a little different than other people. And I did a number of interviews for a project, the documentary we were working on that got held up by COVID, and now we've been so busy we haven't been able to restart it. But I went around and did interviews similar to what The Secret was like. So I was interviewing a lot of thought leaders, and one of the questions was about meditation. And what I found fascinating is how many of the world's top thought leaders meditate, but meditate in a different way than we think. So they don't sit down cross-legged. They don't sit down and get in silence. It's like when like it could be somebody, none of their career has anything to do with doing carpentry or construction. But whenever they're doing construction around the house, that's when they feel they're meditating. Or like JJ Virgin, she was telling me like she puts on, I think it was like Metallica and stuff, and just that's how she works out. And that's her meditation, working out to heavy music. And David G, who's the meditation guru that who used to run Deepak Chopra's wellness center, he talks about meditation. And he said, even if you fall asleep, that's what you're meant to do. Lie down if you want when you're meditating. You don't have to sit up a certain way. And he also said you only need 17 seconds. And on air, he got me to meditate for 17 seconds, and it felt like hours. And so, for one of the things I learned from that experience is we put too many rules on things. And so, for me, sometimes meditation, we have a sauna home. Sometimes it's going in the sauna. Sometimes it's going for a walk around the office. Like, so my meditation routine isn't a routine. It's really it's what I need that day, I feel. But I still believe in meditation, and I sometimes I listen to guided meditation on audio on YouTube or what have you. So I kind of do both. Manifesting, what I will say to that is obviously I believe in manifesting, but I think that one of the things that was a struggle is for people, let's say around, for example, the law of attraction, is let's say when they heard about it at first, maybe through The Secret, where a lot of people heard about it, they didn't also hear about the law of action. And so I think a struggle for a lot of people, so much so that in my previous book, the Book of Why, I wrote about the law of action. And I said, the law of attraction is always working, but if we don't practice the law of action, nothing will happen anyway. And so, so I believe in both. I believe it's important to attract and to have an approach to doing that. But I also believe it's important to take action instead of just expecting it to land on us. And I will say that somebody that I talked about in the new book, even though the book's fictional, I brought in some people from my life. One of them was Cappy Pidwell. And she talks about the code that you can unlock to tap into your subconscious mind and manifesting that way. And I actually think that's something else that gets missed a lot, is a lot of people are trying to manifest from their conscious mind and trying to trick their conscious mind into saying, I'm a millionaire. But your subconscious mind knows if that's true or not. And it's 95% of the work of manifesting. So most people can't even tap into 5% of it. And so they're trying to convince their subconscious mind, which knows better, that they're a millionaire. I think that's why a lot of people struggle, is because it doesn't believe it yet. So there's a great book by Neville Goddard called Feeling is the Secret. And it goes into the idea that somehow you need to get your body to feel that you're a millionaire, not talk yourself in through affirmations into being a millionaire. I'm not saying it doesn't work. And I'm not saying if you just keep doing it over and over again, you won't eventually convince yourself, or just your body won't submit and say, fine, you talked me into it. But what I am saying is ultimately, at the end of the day, in terms of attracting, I believe that we need to practice the law of action. And I also believe we have to figure out a way for our unconscious mind to feel it as well.
Well, congratulations on the release of your upcoming book, The Enlightened Passenger, The Flight That Changes Everything. I understand that is actually going to be coming out soon and is available now for pre-order.
Yeah, it's coming out soon. The book itself, it's a fictional parable. So for those that will be familiar with them, the comparison books, I would say, so people can get at least a feel for what type of book it is, would be The Celestine Prophecy or The Alchemist, Richest Man in Babylon, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Robin Sharma, almost any of Og Mandino's books, The 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard. It would be in that vein of type of story. And so basically the premise is 2 passengers on a plane, older man, younger man. The younger man is a reluctant passenger and doesn't really want to talk to anybody in the flight. He books actually the seat next to him. He falls asleep. He wakes up and has this wiser older man who's described as like a Wayne Dyer-esque person sitting next to him. And basically the flight is about the wiser gentleman teaching the younger gentleman what life is really all about.
Well, how exciting is that? So, Corey, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
One place is they can go to thebookofwhyaudio.com. And the reason I say that is you can actually get the audio version of my last book for free there. So thebookofwhyaudio.com. And that was obviously the Book of Why. It's for that book. The Enlightened Passenger, the website we have set up for that one is thisisthebook.com. And the idea there is this is the only book you need. So thisisthebook.com. And that's the site we have set up for the Enlightened Passenger.
Well, Corey, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Marianne. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you, Corey. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about not only your upcoming book, The Enlightened Passenger, The Flight That Changes Everything, but also your work living in your purpose. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.